A very good morning and a warm welcome to Galaxy TV this morning. It is Wednesday, just gone 10 minutes after 7. It's the hour 7 or 8 o'clock rather this morning. We're coming live to you from our studios in Midrand, that is in the north of Johannesburg. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Galaxy News and I am Petros. Msweli. Let's just take a look at your headlines this morning. South Africa's gross domestic product expands by 6.3% in a quarter of the second, also in a Q4 in 2020. An ESCOM board is set to investigate racism affirmations affixed against CEO Andre Raider. Refilile Daba becomes the first South African black female helicopter pilot. Meanwhile, in Niger, President Issoufou wins a $5 million African Leadership Prize, and also Republican Party is set to continue using Trump name in fundraising appeals. Let's take a look at your first story now. South Africa's gross domestic product expanded by 6.3% quarter on quarter on a seasonally adjusted and annualized basis in the fourth quarter, following a revised 7.3% rather expansion in the third quarter. The data from the statistics agency showed on Tuesday on a year-on-year basis, the GDP contracted by 4.1% in the 3 months to the end of December, compared to a revised 6.2% contraction in the prior quarter. Meanwhile, the economy contracted 7% in the 2020 calendar year compared to 0.2% growth in 2019. The statistician General Risenga Maluleka says it's a positive indicator when considering the fact that the country recently came out of hard lockdown.
When we look at the previous quarters, let us look at the first 2 quarters of 2020, for example. We have seen a negative growth that came from the previous or 2019. So for 4 quarters in a row until the second quarter of 2020, we had seen negative growth, which was the first time we saw that since 1991-92. And the third quarter of 2020 rose by 66% at the time. Now we have revised it to about 67.3%. And having revised it, then when we come to this quarter, this growth comes from a base that was emerging from a very low base. Let us look at second quarter, for example. We had fallen by 51%. And rising from that base had actually created a growth of about 67% as revised. Now this one that we are seeing, the 6.3%, is coming in when things are now slowly returning to normal in the society, coming from a hard lockdown.
Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula says the African National Congress leadership was warned about the controversial Gupta family and the havoc they were going to cause in the country. Mbalula was left fuming after being asked about the recent testimony of the former Transnet CEO Brian Molefe on Zondo Commission. Answering the question, Mbalula said it is not possible for them to defend the very same leaders they cautioned about the Guptas. He said if it leads to being expelled, then so be it, but he stands on his words that the leadership was warned and opted not to listen.
We've been lying to each other back and forth. We warned at some point that Guptas are going to cause us a crisis in this country. The leadership did not listen. Today, we must defend the same leadership. We can't. Let it be. If we are dismissed from the ANC, let us be dismissed for the truth. We did warn everybody that the Guptas thing is going to cause a mess for this country. And it's going to bring us down.
South Africa's struggling state utility ESCOM said on Tuesday that its board of directors will investigate an allegation of racism leveled against Chief Executive Andre Raider. De Raider has been leading efforts to improve ESCOM's financial and operational performances for more than a year. The allegations against Raider was made by suspended Chief Procurement Officer Solechi Chitangano and raised it at a parliamentary committee meeting last week, after which ESCOM's board issued a statement in support of the company's executive management. On Tuesday, the utility said in a new statement that the allegations not only bring ESCOM into disrepute, but it also threatens to detract and distract the focus of the executive team and the GCE in particular from their critical job of restoring ESCOM to operational and financial sustainability. It said the board will appoint an independent senior lawyer to test the allegations of racism and provide updates on the investigation. Moving on now with your stories, Refilwe Ledaba is the first South African black female helicopter pilot, and she has ventured on a mission to help other women to break the glass ceiling and take to the skies. Ledaba says she was pushed by her male colleagues after he joined the aviation industry as a cabin crew. She says coming from a big family, she wanted to do something different, and her love for flying took over.
Refilwe Ledaba doesn't let anything, even gravity, keep her down. She's South Africa's first black female helicopter pilot, a feat she accomplished despite growing up in apartheid South Africa with 6 siblings and a single working mother.
So all through my childhood I saw women doctors. My mother was a school principal. So it was something that when I grew up, it was sort of normal for me to see women doing all these exciting things.
It was while training as cabin crew that Ledaba decided she felt more at home in the cockpit and was encouraged to train to be a pilot by her white colleagues.
170.
In 2005, she learned to fly helicopters at a government school outside Johannesburg, where she says she struggled with nerves and the idea that women must always sit with their legs together, something you cannot do when operating the controls. But she didn't give up, and months later became the first black helicopter pilot to join the South African Police Service.
For me, what was important is who is the second, who's the third, who's the fourth, who's the 100th person. Then we start talking. As much as I was celebrated, I had a responsibility to make sure that it doesn't end with me. It goes on. We get to the 10th. And I think for me, that's worth celebrating.
Now, a certified flight instructor, Ledaba's foundation, Girls Fly program in Africa, has trained hundreds of young women in aerospace and aviation over the past decade. Her mentees and volunteers like Linda Ngozwana says she's an inspiration.
She's fearless. Nothing is beyond her. Nothing is beyond her power.
The program now operates in 4 African countries, and Ledaba has her eyes on others as she works to break the ceiling of a male-dominated industry and help other women discover that the sky's the limit.
Let's just jump now to the African continent. The death toll from a series of explosions at a military barracks in Equatorial Guinea rose by dozens to at least 98 killed after more bodies were recovered. The government said on Tuesday the blast on Sunday in the Mundong-Kwandoma neighborhood of the coastal city of Bata also wounded at least 615 people, authorities have said. The government said that 316 of the injured have been discharged and 299 remain in care in various hospitals in the city. More than 60 people were also rescued from under the rubble by the Civil Protection Corps and Fire Service, the government said. President Teodoro Obiang Nguema said the government will hold an emergency meeting to look into how victims can quickly receive aid from Equatorial Guinea before international aid arrives. Tuesday, that investigation so far showed that the fire may have begun when a farmer set fire to his plot to prepare it for food production, and a breeze spread the flames to the nearby barracks where the high-caliber ammunition was stored.
Medics and rescue workers in Equatorial Guinea searched through rubble on Monday as the death toll from a series of explosions at the weekend mounted. The blasts at a military barracks in Bata killed 98 people, the health ministry said, citing the vice president. Around 600 people have been previously reported as injured, and President Teodoro Obiang Nguema says almost all the city's homes and buildings have been damaged. It has a population of over 250,000 people. He's attributed the accident to negligence related to the handling of dynamite. Images published by local media showed bodies wrapped in sheets lining the side of the road, and children being pulled from under piles of broken concrete and twisted metal. The explosions come as the former Spanish colony suffers a double economic shock caused by the global health crisis and a drop in the price of crude oil, which accounts for around 3/4 of state revenues. The majority of Equatorial Guinea's 1.4 million people live in poverty, and the government has called for international support for the search and rescue effort and to rebuild. On Monday, Spain's foreign minister said a shipment of humanitarian aid would be immediately dispatched.
The supporters of Senegalese opposition leader Ousmane Sonko celebrated in the capital Dakar on Monday after he was released on bail. Ousmane's arrest a week ago has sparked the worst unrest in the West African country which has seen in years. The celebrations were later cut short by the police, who dismissed Ousmane's supporters. Let's take a look how those events unrolled in Senegal.
thousands of supporters of Ousmane Sonko gathered at his home in Dakar on Monday after the Senegalese opposition leader was released on bail under judicial supervision. His arrest a week ago, following an accusation of rape, ignited clashes between protesters and police in which, according to Amnesty International, at least 8 people have died. Sonko was indicted on Monday on the charge that he says is politically motivated. The government denies this, but political pressure has been rising for President Macky Sall, whose tenure has been plagued by accusations that he unjustly torpedoes his political rivals. Some are suspicious of the accusations against Sonko, because 2 other prominent rivals of Sall were previously targeted by criminal charges that prevented them from running for president in 2019. Kindled by Sonko's arrest, the protests have since grown into the worst political unrest in years for one of West Africa's most stable democracies, as Senegal's youth vents frustrations over unemployment, inequality and corruption.
Niger President Mahamadou Issoufou has won the 2020 Mo Ibrahim Prize for African political leadership by fostering economic progress while joining in regional efforts to tackle Islamist militant threat. He is the 6th head of state in Africa to win the $5 million award to be paid out over 10 years, and the first since Liberia's Ellen Johnson's leave in 2017. The prize, founded by Sudanese telecoms tycoon Mo Ibrahim, was not awarded between 2018 and 2020 due to a lack of suitable candidates. Issoufou, who was first elected in 2011 and re-elected in 2016, has distinguished himself by stepping aside after 2 terms, unlike a handful of African leaders such as Ivory Coast Alassane Ouattara and Guinea's Alpha Conde, who changed constitutional term limits to run a 3rd time.
Niger's President Mahamadou Issoufou has been awarded the 2020 Mo Ibrahim Prize for African Political Leadership. The award, which rewards exceptional governance in Africa, was given to the outgoing Nigerian leader on Monday for fostering economic progress while joining in regional efforts to tackle the Islamist militant threat. He is the 6th head of state in Africa to win the $5 million award to be paid out over 10 years, and the first since Liberia's Ellen Johnson Sirleaf in 2017. The prize, founded by Sudanese telecoms tycoon Mo Ibrahim, was not awarded between 2018 and 2020 due to a lack of suitable candidates. Issoufou, who was first elected in 2011 and re-elected in 2016, distinguished himself by stepping aside after 2 terms, unlike a handful of African leaders such as Ivory Coast Alassane Ouattara and Guinea's Alpha Conde. On Twitter, the Nigerian president thanked the foundation and said he considered the award an encouragement to promote democratic values and good governance not only in Niger but across the continent.
Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara on Monday named his close confidant and chief staff Patrick Achi as interim prime minister in place of Hamed Bakayoko, who is absent due to health reasons. Bakayoko was flown to France on February 18th for medical checks. The government said in a statement on Friday that Ouattara had met Bakayoko during a visit in France last week, and given the state of the minister's health, it was recommended that he should stay longer in hospital. Bakayoko, a close ally of Ouattara, was appointed as a prime minister in July 2020 following the sudden death of his predecessor Amadou Coulibaly, who had been handpicked by Ouattara to succeed him. He also held the defense ministry portfolio. A president's statement said that Tenem Birahima Ouattara, the president's brother, was handed the defense portfolio.
Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara has named former Prime Minister Daniel Comblan-Duncan as his choice for Vice President, a new post created under a constitution approved by referendum last year. Duncan, an economist by training, has served in various posts at the West African Central Bank and as finance minister, and is among Ouattara's closest long-time collaborators. He resigned as Prime Minister on Monday.
Representatives of 30 nations met on Tuesday to seek ways to save fast-depleting tuna stocks in the Indian Ocean as demand in Asia and the West soars for sushi and tinned fish. The Indian Ocean Tuna Commission, which groups coastal countries from Australia to Kenya, plus major fishing regions in the European Union, was convening virtually over 5 days to debate yellowfin tuna quotas. Environmentalists say warm water species is at risk of depletion as overfishing compounds are threats from climate change and pollution. This corporate concern to British supermarkets Tesco and Co-op and Belgian retailer Colotry pledged last year to stop buying Indian Ocean yellowfin unless the UN-mandated commission adopts a plan to rebuild stocks. The International Union of Conservation of Nature has for nearly a decade had the species on its red list, yet the total global catch has risen about a third to nearly 450,000 metric tons annually. According to the London-based Blue Marine Foundation Advocacy Group, it estimates that yellowfin tuna stocks could collapse, meaning they will go beyond the minimum size needed for recovery within the next 5 years if the catch is not cut. Well, it's time for Galaxy News to take a very quick short break, but after the break, we're back with more news for you. Stay tuned. We'll be back just right after this. Welcome back. You're still watching Galaxy News here on Galaxy TV. That is a channel 500 on Starset Decoder. Now moving on to the stories. Ghana plans to tap capital markets for up to $5 billion in budget to support in 2021. The finance minister said in a statement on Tuesday. The project is expected to help Ghana be able to compete on the global economic platform with other economic powerhouses. Businessmen from the country have pledged their support on the project.
The Ministry of Energy has shortlisted 3 bids for Ghana's Petroleum Hub project, with one of the investors pledging up to $15 billion to fund the storage component of the ambitious program. The bid was forwarded to the Attorney General's Department for review and advice, with a response expected by year-end for the project to take off in January. Expression of interest was massive, but 3 were chosen and forwarded to the AG for advice. Technical advisor to the project, Dr. Eric Yeboah, told Business 24. Analysts say the $60 billion project will be the biggest private investment in Africa. The 20,000-acre petroleum hub will have 4 refineries, with a cumulative capacity of 600,000 barrels per day, 2 oil jetties, 4 million capacity tank farms, and 2 petrochemical plants. The hub, which will be located at Bonyere in Western Region, targets very large and ultra-large crude carriers, VLCCs and ULCCs, traversing the West African coast, a popular route for European vessels. The project is expected to accelerate the growth of Ghana's downstream petroleum sector and make the country a major player in Africa's oil and gas industry. Government is targeting $1.56 billion in export tax revenue through the project, which is projected to create about 780,000 jobs and increase GDP by more than half by 2030. We expect to serve the VLCCs and ULCCs and also explore the market opportunities in the sub-region, Dr. Yeboah said after a stakeholder engagement with residents of Bonieri over the weekend.
The United States House of Representatives will take up today the Senate version of the sweeping $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief package backed by President Joe Biden. Speaker Nancy Pelosi said the closing in on final approval of one of the biggest U.S. anti-poverty measures since the 1960s. Democrats aim to enact the massive legislation by Sunday when enhanced federal unemployment benefits are set to expire. The Senate passed its version of the bill after a marathon overnight vote on Saturday. The Senate version eliminated or pared back some provisions included in the House bill, which had increased the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour and expanded jobless assistance through August 29. Now that it has passed the Senate, it must approve again by the House before it can make its way to Biden's desk and be signed into law. Pelosi told reporters at Capitol that the timing of a vote on the House floor depends on when they get the paper from the Senate, like the Senate. The Democrats hold a very narrow majority in the chamber, meaning they cannot withstand many votes against the bill.
U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says lawmakers will vote on the Senate's $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief package by this Wednesday.
We'll be having a further discussion about this bill as we move forward to its passage in the next 48 hours.
Democrats aim to enact the legislation by Sunday, when enhanced federal unemployment benefits are set to expire. President Joe Biden has backed the plan, which, if passed, would be the biggest anti-poverty measure since the 1960s. On Monday, Pelosi also pointed to the bill's potential impact for women on the global day for celebrating their importance.
It's important to acknowledge on International Women's Day the connection between the advancement of women, the recognition of the contributions of women, and the needs that are met in the American Rescue Plan.
The Senate passed its version after an overnight vote on Saturday, which eliminated a House-proposed increase to the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour and expanded jobless assistance through August. If approved by the House, it will make its way to Biden's desk to be signed into law.
The Republican Party intends to keep using former President Donald Trump's name in fundraising pitches and other materials, a lawyer for the party said on Monday, despite a cease and desist letter from Trump last week. The letter signed by the lawyers for Trump on Friday to the Republican National Committee, National Republican Congress campaign and National Republican Senate campaign had ramped up tension between the two camps as Trump seeks to preserve his political viability post-election. A Trump advisor said on Saturday that Trump was sensitive to the use of his name and likeness of branding purpose and was eager to the three groups have supported Republican lawmakers who joined Democrats in voting to impeach him. Over the January 6th storming of the U.S. Capitol, Trump supporters, in a response letter, the Republican National Committee said that Trump reaffirmed to RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel over the weekend that approves of the party's current use of his name, wrote Justin Rina, the RNC's top lawyer. The letter indicated that Trump will participate in the party's donor retreat scheduled for next month in Palm Beach, Florida, which is home to Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort.
The Republican Party plans to keep using former President Donald Trump's name in their marketing material, a GOP lawyer said on Monday, despite a request by Trump last week to stop doing so. Trump's lawyers had sent a cease and desist letter on Friday to the Republican National Committee and the National Republican Congressional and Senate campaigns, ramping up tension between Trump and the GOP. A Trump advisor said on Saturday that he was sensitive to the use of his name for branding purposes and was irked that the three groups have supported Republicans who voted to impeach him over the deadly riot at the U.S. Capitol. In their response, the RNC's top lawyer said Trump, quote, reaffirmed party leadership over the weekend that he approves the current use of his name. The party also argued that it had, quote, every right to refer to public figures as it engages in core First Amendment-protected political speech. A representative for Trump did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the letter. But in a statement late on Monday, Trump declared no more money for rhinos or Republicans in name only. He added, quote, "They do nothing but hurt the Republican Party and our great voting base." Trump instead urged supporters to donate to his own Save America super PAC to raise money for hand-picked Republican candidates in the 2022 congressional elections. Some of them are expected to challenge Republican incumbents Trump considers disloyal.
Myanmar security forces quickly snuffed out a sporadic anti-junta protest on Tuesday after hundreds of young activists who had been trapped overnight in a district of its biggest city, Yangon, were able to get out. Western powers and the United Nations had called for Myanmar's military rules to allow the youngsters to leave after fears for their safety as troops moved in. The army takeover and arrest of elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi on February 1 has brought the Southeast Asian nation to a near standstill. Daily protests are being staged across the country and security forces are cracking down harshly. More than 60 protesters have been killed and over 1,800 detained, groups said. Scattered protests were held in Yangon and other towns across Myanmar on Tuesday, but were quickly broken up by security forces using tear gas and stun grenades. At least 2 people were wounded, one by gunshot in the town of Mohini in the north, local media said.
Myanmar forces trapped protesters in the country's biggest city, Yangon, overnight on Monday. Hundreds of young protesters were blocked by security forces from leaving the neighbourhood Sanchong. Thousands then poured onto the streets in support of those trapped, despite a nighttime curfew. Flashes of light from police firing guns and stun grenades lit up the night. On Tuesday, activists told Reuters the trapped protesters were finally able to leave after calls from Western powers and the UN for their release. The military takeover and arrest of elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi has plunged Myanmar into chaos. Over 60 protesters have been killed and nearly 2,000 people detained, according to a local advocacy group. Determined to continue their crackdown, 5 media companies in Myanmar were stripped of their licenses, according to state TV on Monday. The independent outlets include Myanmar Now, Democratic Voice of Burma, Mazima, 7 Day and Kitthit Media. All of them had been covering the anti-coup protests. Meanwhile, at least 29 journalists have been arrested.
Pope Francis ended his historic tour of Iraq on Monday, departing by plane from Baghdad after visiting conflict-torn cities, meeting Muslim and Christian leaders and preaching peace and coexistence over war. Francis waved one last time from before boarding a plane flying to Vatican and Iraqi flags from its cockpit windows. President Bahman Salih accompanied the 84-year-old pontiff down a red carpet to his flight. During Francis' trip, the first ever papal to visit Iraq, he toured 4 cities, including Mosul, the former Islamic State stronghold, where vast areas still lie in ruins, telling Iraqis that peace is more powerful than war. The pontiff, who walked with a limp during parts of the frantic tour, also made a historical first in meeting Iraq's Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani, Iraq's top Shiite Muslim cleric. Iraqs welcomed the Pope and said it was a chance for the world to see their perpetually crisis-hit nation in a new light.
Pope Francis ended his historic tour of Iraq on Monday, flying out of Baghdad International Airport after visiting cities torn apart by conflict, meeting Muslim and Christian leaders, and preaching a message of peace and coexistence over war. Francis waved to crowds one last time as he boarded the plane, which had Vatican and Iraqi flags flying from its cockpit windows. During the trip, the first ever papal visit to the country, he toured 4 cities, including Mosul, the former Islamic State stronghold where vast areas still lie in ruins. It was there he repeated his message again, telling Iraqis that, quote, peace is more powerful than war, and added Iraq would, quote, always remain with me in my heart.
I
stopped in front of the destroyed church, and I just didn't have any words. It's something you can't believe. You can't believe it. Now, not only the church, but also other churches and a mosque that were destroyed. You can see they didn't get on with the people of this place. It's just unbelievable, our human cruelty.
Another historical first came when he met Iraq's top Shiite Muslim cleric. Hours after the Pope's departure, the country's Prime Minister, Mustafa al-Kadhimi, made a televised address calling for further dialogue.
On the basis of this historic responsibility and in the atmosphere of love and tolerance promoted by the visit of His Holiness the Pope to the land of Iraq, the land of Mesopotamia, we present today the call for a national dialogue to be a pathway for achieving the aspirations of our people.
The whirlwind and potentially risky visit appeared to be well received by the public, with officials saying it was a chance for the world to see their perpetually crisis-hit nation in a new light.
Millions of English children and teenagers headed back to school on Monday for the first time in 2 months, having endured their second extended stretch of home learning because of a strict national lockdown to slow the spread of COVID-19. The reopening of schools to all pupils is the first step in a 4-stage government plan to ease the lockdown while trying to prevent a new surge in infections after a devastating winter wave that severely strained hospitals. Since the start of the pandemic, Britain has recorded 124,500 deaths within 28 days of a positive COVID-19 test, the 5th highest official death toll in the world and the Western Europe. For adults in England, the lockdown remains in force with social contact severely restricted. People under orders to stay at home except for essential reasons. Most shops are closed and cafes and restaurants able to offer only takeaway or delivery.
After months of remote learning, millions of English children and teenagers returned to school on Monday. The reopening of schools is the first step in a 4-stage government plan to ease the lockdown while trying to prevent a new surge in infections. New safety measures for pupils include regular hand washing, staggered arrival times, and social bubbles. For secondary schools, the requirements are more onerous, with teenagers being mass tested for COVID and required to wear masks in the classroom. The near consensus has been that getting children back to school is essential for their mental health, education and life chances. Most pupils had missed out on more than 3 months of school in the spring and early summer of 2020, when Britain was under its first strict national lockdown. James Fisher is the head of Harris Academy in Sutton, England.
I think I'm seeing a lot of thrilled children, really grateful to be back in school, really thrilled to be getting back on with their learning, but we're prepared for any of the inconsistencies that might be thrown up in terms of their behaviour. We're prepared for that as well.
Things have also opened up for England's care home residents, who are now allowed 1 regular visitor. Nikki Clough was one of the first family members allowed back to the Alexander House home in Wimbledon, South London.
Right, I'm going to leave you guys to it.
She had not been able to visit her mother, 87-year-old Pam Harrison, at the home since March 2020. Aside from a couple of meetings when Harrison had been admitted to hospital, all of Clough's interactions with her mother had been through the ground floor window. Now, the only barrier to connection is the comprehensive protective gear Clough has to wear. For adults in England, the lockdown remains in force, with social contact severely restricted. People are under stay-at-home orders, most shops are closed, and cafes and restaurants are only able to offer takeaway or delivery. The remaining 3 steps of the government's plan to ease the lockdown are due to kick in April, May and June, subject to a continued reduction of coronavirus infections. Since the start of the pandemic, Britain has recorded 124,500 deaths from COVID-19, the 5th highest official death toll in the world and the worst in Europe.
Harley Davidson has decided the best way to get younger customers to buy a new motorcycle is to sell them a used one first. The Milwaukee-based company plans to roll out a certified pre-owned bike program known as HD Certified, adapting a strategy car makers have been following for years to position well-tendered used vehicles as substitute for low-margin entry-level new models. Harley's embrace of used bikes is part of a new 5-year turnaround strategy under Chief Executive Jochen Zeitz and its latest effort to expand the brand's appeal beyond middle-aged and affluent riders. The 118-year-old American brand has been steadily losing U.S. market share amid declining retail sales for 6 years.
Harley-Davidson can't rest its laurels on its fiercely loyal but aging fan base, so it's taking a page from automakers. Next month, the iconic American motorcycle maker will begin selling certified pre-owned bikes aimed at capturing younger buyers. Its program, HD Certified, marks its first entry into the used marketplace in the U.S. More than 300 dealers have expressed interest in participating. It's part of Harley's new strategy aimed at expanding the brand's appeal beyond middle-aged and affluent riders. Harley needs to attract new riders. The 118-year-old brand has been steadily losing market share in the U.S. Retail sales have fallen for 6 years. Used Harleys are less expensive and demand for pre-owned bikes is strong. Some dealers told Reuters used Harleys outsold new ones last year by 3-1. And J.D. Power data shows Harley was the most sought-after brand in the market for used bikes last year. Under the new program, Harley will certify motorcycles up to 5 years of age with up to 25,000 miles. They'll be inspected and backed by a 12-month limited warranty.
Well, that's how we come to the end of today's show. I am Petros. Msweli. We're just coming live to you from our studios in Midland. This is Galaxy TV. We'll see you once again next time. It is a goodbye for now.